Hi, my name's Elise, and I live in a house with a really big dog. You will probably hear him barking a lot. I think he's got some special needs. I've had him for a long time, but he doesn't behave like other dogs, and I think that he has some brain damage from previous owners. He's a rescue. He was abused. Anyway, so he's going to bark a lot because if he hears like any kind of noise whatsoever, he barks, and he's very big and very loud. Anyway, so I'm Elise. I'm an entrepreneur, and I've been an entrepreneur for a while now. And I kind of wanted to talk about this. So after I had my first child, I quit my job. At the time I wanted to be a stay-at-home mom full-time, and I wanted to be with my baby, and I didn't want to leave her, and I don't regret that. However, after she grew to be a few months old, I was kind of itching to do something meaningful, and I started picking up like service projects. And then we moved down south to St. George, and while I was there, my daughter she grew up a little bit, and I just decided to start my own photography and videography business because I needed a creative outlet, but I also needed something to do with my energy, right? Because like entrepreneurs, we have this like restlessness. We feel like I'm definitely part of this group. I need to be doing something meaningful. I need to be doing something productive, and I like to work on projects. I like to be working on a project. It like brings me joy. So I started this photography and videography business because I picked up photography when I first got married back in 2014, and it became a real passion of mine, and people were telling me I was really good at it and maybe I should try doing it professionally. And so I decided, why not, and started this business, and I started picking up videography, which was really fun. And I had some practice with that as well. I started making like our family videos, and I started editing them to make them more like movie-esque. So I've just, I'm a creative business type person. And so I started this business, and, as a new entrepreneur, there's kind of like the classic stumbling blocks in getting started on your own without having any kind of like mentor or previous experience. And I feel like they're all common stumbling blocks. Just like realizing what's it called? The uninformed optimism that transitions into informed pessimism, and then most people quit there. And so I just, I started to learn being a small business owner and an entrepreneur is not what it looks like. It does not match with your vision a lot of the times, at least in the beginning. And the more that I read, the more that I learned that it takes a business like somewhere upwards of like 5 years to really take off and be considered successful. And so I realized like I was going to be doing a lot of grunt work for a very long time if I wanted this to really succeed. And usually by the time you hit year 3, you're ready to transition to something new, which I did. So I had a lot of fun. I did a lot of photography and videography, and it was a lot of fun. I worked with models, and that was my favorite. And we did a lot of like styled shoots. And what was the word? There was a word for it. Styled shoots. Anyway, it was really fun. I would collaborate with other business owners and fashion designers. It was super cool. I would collaborate with other makeup artists and hairstylists, and I loved my models. I loved the models that I worked with. Anyway, so I did this. It was mostly like resume portfolio building, but on occasion, like I would get paid for certain shoots, usually like family shoots. That's kind of the big money maker here in Utah is family and wedding. I didn't want to do weddings though. I was a mom. I didn't want to put that much of a time commitment into it. Anyway, so I did that for probably 3 years. Now I can't remember exactly the timeline, but it was probably 3 years that I did that. And then we moved. So if you have like a client-based business that's specific to an area, like physical clients and clientele, moving means starting over. And because that type of a business, photography and videography, is like in-person services primarily, it was just like starting over fresh. And when we moved back up north, I had another baby. I was pregnant again. I was becoming really chronically ill, and we didn't know why. So I dealt with a chronic, debilitating illness for 3.5 years. So I took a break from entrepreneurship for that time and was just focusing on my health. And that was a really long, grueling experience. And I was very, very ill for what felt like forever. And during that time, I popped out 2 babies. And after my last baby was born, I had this call again. It was just calling me, and I felt it, and I knew that I needed to go back to school and start another business. And I've read at this point, I've read like all of the business books, the big ones, the most popular ones, and I've done so many webinars and received mentoring from so many successful business owners. And during my gosh, since I was a teenager, I've always gotten my nails done. And I was doing my nails one night, and I was like, you know what? What if I go get my nail technology license? Because like I legitimately love this, and I've been doing this for like 10 years. And so because I used to go get my nails done at the salon, then I started purchasing my own stuff and doing it at home. And so I decided I'm going to go to school to get my nail technology license. And that's what I did. So I went to school and realized that I love it, and realized that I love the beauty industry. I realized that I love the community there. I loved beauty school. Both times that I went. So the first time that I went was in, I think it was 2022. My youngest was 1, okay? And I had 4 kids, and my ex was starting his own business. It was chaos. He would come home, and then I would drive to school, and I would be there until late at night. So I was doing the night program. And you know, for those of you who don't know, beauty school is actually pretty intense. It's a lot of heavy coursework in a short amount of time, and intense memorization on subjects that you are completely unfamiliar with, and you have tests like multiple times a week. And so it's just like you're doing a lot all at once, and it just feels like your brain is really pushed to a lot of limits. But I did really well. You know, I do well in those kinds of environments, and I was probably at the top of my class, honestly. And I loved it. I did so well and made some really great friends, and just realized, like, I fell in love with the industry, and I fell in love with the community. And I decided to go independent because I am primarily a stay-at-home mom, so I wanted to prioritize that, and I still do, and I don't regret that. That's very important to me. And so I wanted to be a stay-at-home mom who worked independently on the side when I could, when my ex could be there to watch the kids while I took clients. And that's how we worked it out for a long time until my kids were school-aged, which was actually this year. So I would take clients in the evening time or early in the morning before my kids woke up. And you wouldn't think, but actually that was a very popular time slot for my clients. They liked to be here at 5 a.m., 6 a.m. to get their nails done. Because a lot of my clients are working moms. So yeah, we would get up extra early. I would take clients early in the morning, late at night, or whenever my ex could be here to watch the kids while I took a client. And it went really well. I built a clientele. And then after a year, I felt the call again to go back and get another license, go back to school again, add to my current business. And so I went back to school and got my master esthetician's license. And that license takes longer. I decided to go full-time, daytime, and got it completed in a year's time. And once again, that program was also really intense. But it was so good for me because I started that program, I think, like a month after my ex moved out and we separated. So I was in that program all through the beginning stages of my divorce, and it literally saved my life. I owe so much of my life, my mental health, my well-being to this day to that year program that I did during that season of my life. I can't imagine where I would be if I didn't do that. And so it was really good for me to do that and keep myself preoccupied and productive and busy and out of the house and out of these environments and around people that are just so great. Like, that was the main thing, is like that community is so supportive, and they're great cheerleaders, and they're girls, and they're just like the best people I know. So I'm just so glad that I got to be a part of that during that season. And I had people checking in on me when, they just had a gut instinct that something wasn't right with me. And I remember those moments vividly. And it was just wonderful being a part of that sisterhood. I call it a sisterhood, but it's like a peoplehood, You know what I mean? Because like it's very colorful community. So we're part. It's like a family. Brothers, sisters, everything in between. And I graduated with my master esthetician license in October, and just immediately went solo. That was a really big investment. I think it was probably like 5 times more expensive to go solo as an esthetician as it was as a nail tech. Because like I could say maybe my nail tech initial investment might have been around like $900. Maybe less, maybe even less, like the initial investment, and I just kind of compiled it over time. The esthetician stuff, products, medical grade luxury products, the kit that I purchased through school, the massage table and towels, sheets, gloves, sanitation, like all the things. It was a big initial investment. And I thought having a clientele base would really help with adding to my spa clientele, and it didn't. My current clientele base, they're with me for nails, and they don't want my spa services for the most part. And so I actually have 2 separate clienteles. I have my spa clientele, which is for my aesthetics, and then I have my nail clientele. It's kind of funny how there isn't really much of a crossover there. And so once again, like, because I do have an established name here, I think that helped bringing in clients, but no, like, it's like starting kind of pretty much fresh, starting over with building a whole new client base, for a whole new business. And I've been doing that for over a year now. The aesthetics, I've been doing nails for over 3 years and been doing aesthetics for over a year now. And so I've been running my own independent spa, and I've learned a lot from this experience. Primarily, like, where I live, it's really hard to network, because although there are a lot a lot of people who claim to have small businesses. For the most part, they're not actual official businesses. They're just doing a side hustle to try and make ends meet because of this harsh economy. And so they're not really serious business owners, which makes it really difficult to network with them. Actually, it makes it impossible to network with them. There isn't a lot of great business etiquette because of that. I've tried to communicate with these people and I've tried to network with them, and they're not very gracious, and there's not really great business etiquette from these individuals. And some of them have been kind of blatantly unkind, and that has been really disappointing to me, living in this area with so many small business owners and just so much potential, and just, it kind of seems like wasted potential, but at the same time, they actually like literally could not care less. They don't care, and I don't think that they realize the importance of rapport, and because that's just not their focus. They're just, all they can think about is like how can I make more money, and they're not thinking like, having good relationships is actually probably pretty important. Anyway, but I think that's one of the stumbling blocks as a beginner entrepreneur, is like realizing, oh, like I can't be cutthroat in this industry. There actually has to be like value given in order to have value received, and it's a give and take relationship. It's like a relationship, an actual relationship of giving and taking, receiving, and building rapport, client relations, and just building rapport with others through networking. I think that has been the most successful way of building my business, has been through successful and appropriate networking. Just great business etiquette. I've gone to networking events. I have spent hours upon hours countless hours emailing, cold calling, messaging, showing up at businesses, just talking with business owners and networking. Just like I probably upwards of 12 hours at the least I put in on networking, and that's probably like a really low estimate. It's probably been a lot more than that. 36, I don't know. It's a lot. I think that of all of my strategies as an entrepreneur, networking has been my number one. And that is what I put the most time and effort into, apart from marketing, social media marketing. So anyway, so here I am a little over a year later, and I'm actually kind of slowing down with my business, just because my primary focus is on my education journey, because I am a full-time student again. I think I'm going to be a student for the rest of my life at this point. But I realized as I worked with these people, like, your job as a beauty therapist is actually kind of therapy, and your clients will share really intimate, vulnerable information with you. And that's one of my favorite parts about what I do, is being a safe space for people who have really big things going on in their life, and sometimes really big secrets, and sometimes I'm the only one or one of few people who know. And that's like really sacred territory to me. I hold that space as sacred space. And I fell in love with that aspect of what I do, and I decided I wanted to go into therapy and be a therapist because of that. And somewhere along the way, I decided to go in a completely different direction. However, the field that I'm going into more or less actually has a lot of those aspects as well, because I will be working with clients, and from what I hear, like, you do serve as kind of emotional and psychological support for your clients in this field that I'm looking into. And I think that I would be probably really good at that, like building a rapport and client relations in this perspective field for this reason. And my current undergrad is going to serve me greatly as well. This undergrad was not for nothing. Right now I'm studying human and family services, and it's kind of social sciences mixed with psych a little bit, and it's just a lot of case studies and studying family relations, family dynamics, family crises, and common threats to humans and families, threats and situations attributing to marginalized populations and vulnerable populations and things like that. And my eyes have really been opened. I've learned a lot. And the purpose of this degree is to basically support humans and families, create support, create resources, create education programs. This degree feeds into social work. It also feeds into family and individual therapy. And I was looking at doing both. I was kind of leaning more towards social work, and I think I had decided to go into the social work route until I had a recent revelation that I wanted to do something else entirely and completely different and way more grueling, and I don't even know why I decided to do this, but here we go. Anyway, so that's kind of where I'm at and where I've been. And so to just kind of talk about my experiences as a mompreneur, a mom who is also an entrepreneur, a female in business, working in some highly competitive, kind of cutthroat industries, as well as really supportive and wonderful industries. Here's a couple things that I learned about the entrepreneur community here where I live. Is those at the bottom are the sharks, and they are incredibly difficult to work with or impossible to work with, and very not gracious, very poor business etiquette. And I'm sure that I was there when I first started as well, because if you don't know, you have really terrible ideas on what it means to be a business owner, and you have to learn the hard way and make some big mistakes and burn some bridges and look a fool and all the things to get to higher territory. I learned that the people at the top are the most gracious, are the most helpful, have the best business etiquette. I met a guy online. I reached out to him to network. He was so unbelievably helpful. He responded right away. He took the time to give me meaningful responses. He took the time to provide me with really great resources. He sent me links. He sent me contacts. He gave me advice. He was encouraging. And I find that is actually the culture of entrepreneurs and business owners who are functioning at the top, who've made it, and they're successful, and they've been doing it for a long time, and they're doing really well, and they're not at all they're not at all like the people at the bottom who really are not good business owners. And so that was a kind of a big, like, what? Wow, like, this is wild to me. And that was actually kind of like my indication for like who I should and should not work with, is like the initial contact, how that first initial contact goes, how it goes down. Are they gracious? Are they gatekeeping? Are they putting up a front? Are they keeping you at a distance? Are they telling you no right away? Are they rude? And Or are they incredibly helpful, very responsive, very professional, very gracious, and just so encouraging and so supportive and providing so much? And this happened so many times. I had that so many times. I mean, both. I've had both so many times. I've had really, really bad experiences with a lot of very poor, under-experienced business owners. And then I've had really fantastic experiences with very successful, seasoned business owners. And it just taught me a lot. It taught me a lot about business etiquette. It taught me a lot about just working with meaning and working with purpose and working from the heart. I have a friend who's a chiropractor and just an excellent human, and he and I would kind of talk business a lot, actually. Every once in a while we would just kind of have these threads going about business, and you know, he just kind of reminded me at one point. I was kind of feeling a little lost, and he was like, you just come back home to your heart. Like, what is your heart telling you? Like, follow your heart. Always lead with the heart, kind of thing. And it just helped me remember, because sometimes if you associate with the wrong type of business owners, then you also develop toxic mindsets and toxic patterns and practices. And it's important to associate with the right kind of business owners and good business owners, and just good people with the moral compass that kind of aligns with you, that will help you and help encourage you to run your business the way that you should and the way that feels right to you. And it's not going to be the same for everyone. And I learned, that's something else that I learned, is like, I was gathering so much information from everyone, hundreds of business owners, some of them way at the top with huge client bases, some of them middle grade, some of them low grade. And I was just getting so much information. And at the end of the day, I ended up doing my own thing anyways. Like, it's great to get ideas. It's great to get advice from other business owners. But at the end of the day, I had to follow my heart. I had to do what felt right to me. I had to do what was in alignment with who I am. And that was actually very liberating. It was very liberating. It was a little bit terrifying. And, you know, sometimes you're going against the grain when you do that in some ways. And the other part about being an entrepreneur is just like getting comfortable with cutting losses. And you're cutting losses pretty much all day, every day. And especially if you're like working as intensely as I was at it. I'm not right now. Like I said, I'm mostly focusing on school. But if you are working as intensely as I was, which is basically full-time hours, just constantly cold calling, constantly reaching out, networking, setting up meetings, meeting with people in person, doing lunch, group meetups, discussion boards, oh my gosh, all of the things, so many things. If you're doing all that, it is a full-time job. You are not getting paid for it. You are not seeing the rewards for your benefits, at least for many years. And when you're doing all that, I can't remember where I was going with this. Hold on, I'm like trying to rewind a second with my brain. When you've gotten into the flow of what you're doing, okay, when you're going hard and you are doing all those things, there's going to be a lot of losses. You're going to cut a lot of losses. You're going to pay for lunches. You're going to pay for a lot of gas. You're going to pay for a networking space. You're going to receive a lot of rejection. But ultimately, you have to realize those people were always below you anyways. And sometimes that rejection stings because they're not gracious, but again, they're below you. And so much rejection, mostly rejection. Let's just put it that way. Like, most of my networking and marketing efforts, community outreach efforts, for the most part, were unsuccessful. I learned a lot every single time. But, okay, I cut my losses. The wins, big wins. Like, big, huge wins. Okay? When I got in contact and connected with the right people, I built relationships with those people. We built actual friendships where we would check on each other, see how we're doing. I knew about personal things going on in their lives that we would check in on each other for. We would check in with like business things and come up with collaborations. We would collaborate on a marketing campaign. We would collaborate on an event. I had a big event last year, almost this time last year. It was in May, and collaborated with like over 12 local small businesses. Some of them were so freaking great. Like, so great. I think I cried on multiple occasions with how gracious and supportive and wonderful these little small businesses were where I live. And there were so few. I probably got 50 no's and 12 yeses. Like, that's just it. And it was probably actually more than that. It was probably more like 75 no's. If I can remember, like, I think I counted. I think it was like 75 no's and 12 yeses. And it's just like, there were days where it was just all day long, no. All day long, getting verbally beat up and emotionally discouraged. And, it can be so discouraging. And it can be especially discouraging when you discover the type of business owner that you want to be, and you start leading with your heart, and you start mixing heart with strategy, and you try to find your people that way, and you do, but you realize that it's so few and far between. Like, maybe 5 people to every 50 misses. And it can be really discouraging. It can be really disheartening. I remember crying so many times because of how discouraged and disappointed I was in other business owners and other people around me, and the two-faced energy and experiences that I had, where people would pretend to be super nice, but then as soon as you brought up like a collaboration opportunity, they were rude, and just realizing like, oh, you were only nice to me because you were hoping that I would pay you for something. And it's just like really sad. It's very sad and disheartening to see how some people run their businesses, and how selfish they can be, and how misguided they are, and they misunderstand the point. I think they misunderstand business in general. Some of the most gracious, what's the word? Respectful of time, most giving of resources, information, encouragement, the most encouraging people were the most busy people. Like, very busy, very high demand lifestyles and businesses, have way too much going on, and yet they were willing and able to take that time, whereas we have other people who claim to be too busy and they're really not. They just don't want to, and are ungracious about it and rude. So it can be really difficult in the culture and climate of business ownership here where I live. And this is going to be specific to where I live. It's not ever like that. I don't know. Maybe it is like this everywhere. I don't know. But where I live, I think there's just too much ignorance on the subject of entrepreneurship and business ownership. And it's just kind of interesting to see that the beginners are all kind of doing the same things and making the same mistakes. And like I said, I probably did it too. I was probably just like them for the first few years of being a business owner until I realized that's not working and started taking notes from the people up top and realizing that I needed to make some changes inside myself. And the more that I worked on myself also, the better of a business owner I became. So I did like a really, really grueling, intense, like 7-year self-improvement, self-help journey. And I was reading a lot of books. I was doing all these workshops. I was doing workbooks. I was going to therapy. Oh my God. It was a full-time job, I would say. My self-help journey was a full-time job. I put just as much, if not more, time, energy, and effort into that as I did being a mother and being an entrepreneur. Easily. So the more that I worked on myself and the more that I took a really intense inward glance at my inner child, my core wounds, and worked at, outlining my behaviors, my emotions, my triggers, and what that teaches me about who I am and what's going on with me. And the more that I address those things, like the better awareness I had of just so much, and my relationships and the ability to build meaningful relationships with good and decent and great and healthy individuals that were at my level. And I think that was one thing that I realized when I was like communicating with these people at the top, is I was like, wow, I need to get at their level. And so like to get at their level, I got to get at their level. You know what I mean? And so I just started working on myself a ton and working on my character, my healing, my weaknesses, my strengths. And I put just as much focus on my strengths, if not more focus on my strengths, as I did on my weaknesses. And worked on strengthening my strengths, worked on accepting my weaknesses, and cutting losses, and just realizing like that's just a part of the process. That's kind of the name of the game, is like learning how to cut losses all day, every day, and just learn to get comfortable in that space. I used to take rejection really hard. I used to take no's really hard. I used to take losses really hard. I used to take it personally. I used to think that something was wrong with me. All these things. And those are things that taught me about myself and what I needed to work on. And working on those things helped me build more confidence, self-assurance, and I don't know, like I'm just not afraid of rejection anymore. I'm not afraid of failure anymore. I'm not afraid of looking a fool anymore. I'm not afraid of doing something badly. I'm not afraid of people telling me no. I'm not afraid of people letting me down. I like plan for it. Actually, I'm like, okay, if this person falls through, how am I going to pivot? And just kind of think ahead. And I've gotten really good at pivoting. I've gotten really good at making necessary adjustments and, what's the word? Adapting. Just being really adapting to situations that kind of just get sprung on you. I got good at planning and strategy, time management, and networking, and all those things. So there's just like so much to be learned when you go all in on it. I think that people who are not going all in on their side hustle are missing out on the point. They're missing out on the best parts of being a small business owner. And really it makes you a better person. That might not be the case for everyone. Obviously, like, we know that there are plenty of owners out there, especially the biggest ones with the most money, that kind of don't have a soul. And I'm really sorry for them, but and like, maybe people with the biggest hearts are the least successful in business ownership, but really what it comes down to is like your core values and setting goals that are in alignment with those core values, because that helps you sleep good at night. That alleviates a lot of stress. That's a very liberating experience. That takes the expectations of other people and their businesses off of you and your business and how you want to run your business. And being okay with looking different, and being okay with other people telling you that what you're doing is a waste of time. I had people telling me that, like, that's a waste of time. Or telling me that I'm not doing it right, like it should be done this way. And and in my head I would just be like, yeah, if my goal was to make as much money as possible, but it's not. That's not my goal. And so, yeah, just determining what the real goal is and sticking to it and making sure that everything else is in alignment with that. It meant everything in my business ownership journey. And that information, like what I just said, you might want to take with a grain of salt, and other really successful business owners might say, like, absolutely do not listen to that. But for some people, this might be for you, especially if you're not in need of more money or the most money possible. If you're not desperate, let's put it that way. If you're not desperate for great success, or like a specific and designated, outlined type of success, then you can just kind of follow what I just said and follow your heart, and kind of combine heart with strategy, and make sure that strategy is in alignment with heart, and goals are in alignment with heart, and things like that. For people who are desperate to make like a very specific income and need to make a baseline income, or have a goal of like this income up here, then yeah, like strategy is probably what you need to lean more into, but you can still be morally acting on a morally high ground while doing that. You don't have to be leeching off of other people, using other people to get ahead, only to cast them aside when you no longer need them. And all of the underhanded and low blows that come along with people who are just desperate to get ahead at whatever the cost, even if it means selling their soul. So I think it's important to establish a moral ground for your business and really envision what that looks like, and then kind of build from there. I think that that's really, really, really important. And I think that's actually probably a really great place to start, and a foundational start is, where's my heart? What are my morals? And then what are my goals? How can we make these two marry each other? And build something meaningful and purposeful and purpose-driven, and it changes the game. Completely changes the game. 100%. I saw 100% turnaround after that. I was able to network way more effectively with the right people. I was able to cut my losses a lot quicker and move on to the next, and the next loss, and the next loss, and the next loss, until I found the right fit. And I was a lot more determined at that point. I was a lot less disheartened. I was a lot less discouraged. I was a lot less lacking in motivation after hours and hours and hours of work with absolutely nothing to show for it. I was like, well, yep, we'll just get right back at it tomorrow, and I'm sure that I'll succeed at something eventually. And there's just a lot more of a genuine drive at that point, when you are able to marry the world of strategy and goal, like very specified goals of like a specified income, with your moral standards and your moral compass and your heart and where you're at and what you actually want to put out into the world, like what value you want to bring, your mission statement. This advice that they give you, it's all spot on, like you got to start with what you actually want to provide people and your mission statement. I think that it's really important to really like lock down your mission statement. So maybe I'll start another episode on that specifically, but regardless, I'm just going to probably do various episodes on business ownership, entrepreneurship, what I've learned being a female in business, being a mompreneur, wearing multiple hats, all of the things, and what I've learned along the way. And if you find this helpful, let me know. Give this a thumbs up. And also, if you have questions, please leave your questions in the comments so that we can address them in future videos. Otherwise, thank you for watching, and I will catch you guys on the next episode.